Good afternoon. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. It is Wednesday, October 11th, 2023. It is 1:44 p.m. This session is set to go until 3:15. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeastern 110 for public virtual attendance. You may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. Vice Chair Ty Messer joining us via Zoom, and Commissioner Gary Edwards to my left. Also in the boardroom, we have Interim County Manager Robin Campbell, as well as Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder, and we have the budget team here with us today to continue the 2024 through 2025 budget presentations. And so we'll be starting with the tourism promotion area, and then after we will be moving into emergency management and Medic One. And we have Annette Pitts, who's the Executive Director for Experience Olympia and Beyond. And Nicole, anything you would like to add or just pass it on to?
We can pass it on to
Okay. Take it over, Annette.
All right. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for letting me be here today. I am going to share my screen with you and we'll do our presentation. Before I get into all the numbers, I am going to show you one example of one of the projects that we did for you guys this year, which I think is pretty fun. And let's see if it works. Sometimes sound works on Zoom and sometimes it doesn't. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So we're going to start out with this little video that we did this year. If it starts playing and you don't hear sound, please feel free to say so, and then we'll skip the video and move right into the numbers so I won't waste your time. How does that sound?
Okay.
Okay.
If there's sound playing now, we can't hear it.
I think it is buffering at the moment. Okay. So let's, it doesn't appear to have started playing.
It's the water.
Here we go.
What about now?
Yes.
It's exceptional quality and unchanging good taste.
Oh, the sound went away.
Oh.
It was, we were hearing it and then.
Now?
Mm-mm. Now we can. Lady and top row.
So Annette, we're seeing the video, but we're getting no sound.
Oh, I thought you said you could hear it. Okay, well.
Okay, it was working and then it kind of went away and.
And then what we were hearing was we weren't sure that that's what actually went with the video.
Okay, well then let's just skip it. Videos on Zoom are kind of like gambling. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and let's not waste your time on it. So I'll send the link to you guys though afterward, because I think it's important that you see some of the larger projects that we invested in this year. And I'll just move into the budget numbers. How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
Yep, it's not as fun as videos, but we'll get into it. So the first part of our presentation is we're going to be doing a mid-year budget adjustment for 2023. The second part of our presentation will be the budget that we're proposing for 2024. I want to explain to you why we do a mid-year budget adjustment though. You know, we have a number of things that affect our funding. And one of the first things that people ask us about is where does our funding come from? We have kind of three larger buckets. Is my Zoom window blocking the graphic for you, or is that just on my end?
I think it's your end. We can see.
Oh, okay, great. Then I won't worry about it. When we were putting our budget together at the beginning of 2023, our budget was basically just shy of $1.5 million. When we look at kind of the percentage of it, over 65% came from TPA, or we were anticipating coming from TPA. just over 20% from lodging tax awards, another percentage coming from private funds that we raise of just over 14%, and then a really small amount that comes from interest on investments that we have. And we really are kind of in this weird timing situation that we're very dependent on these different buckets of money that come to us, but they come to us in a timing that isn't conducive for when our budgets are due. So I'm going to talk about that timeline, but I want to just explain for anybody who's watching who may not know what the TPA or a tourism promotion area is and how it works, just since it is such a significant portion of our funding. A TPA, a tourism promotion area, is basically a $2 assessment that gets passed through from visitors who are staying overnight at a non-tax exempt lodging property that has 40 or more places for them to spend the night. If we're talking about hotels and motels, we're talking about rooms. That kind of that mechanism, that enabling mechanism comes through the RCWs, and it really outlines how that works. The hotel or the motel or whatever the property is, they collects that $2 assessment. And keep in mind that every county and city or municipality that has a tourism promotion area, they do it a little differently, but we do $2 as our amount. They send it on to Department of Revenue. The county is our fiscal agent. Thank you for doing that. And then you guys return those funds to us. It's important for folks to realize that an assessment is not a tax. It's different. Assessments are voluntary, and they're usually industry based. So in our case, that tourism promotion area is based on lodging properties. They opt into it because they're going to be the ones that receive the direct benefit of our work. People often will say, why are you spending so much time focusing on heads and beds? It's because that's how that assessment works. We are contractually obligated to make sure that what we are trying to do through our scope of work is to return people to those properties that are passing through those collections. So we just try to make sure that everybody is on the same page about that. When we're doing our forecasts, some of the things that affect our ability to forecast the year ahead, again, because TPA is such a large part of our budget, we can't know how many tax exempt bookings come through at properties. That we can look at occupancy, we can look at the number of rooms that we have, the days of the month, all those things, but we don't know how many of them are going to be tax exempt. There's also a time delay of 3 months by the time, when a visitor comes to the hotel property, they pay that TPA assessment. By the time it comes to us, it's 3 months later. So it's really hard for us to kind of forecast and know how that's going to wind up with that delay. And then, of course, our fiscal agent is not able to share information about that due to privacy concerns. So we do the best that we can when we're forecasting and making our budget, but we know by the time we get caught up into things and we're in the current period, it's out of date. And so we just have to do a mid-year budget adjustment once we start learning kind of what the dynamics at hands are. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, on the timeline, one of our other major funding sources is lodging tax awards that we receive from some of the municipalities that we serve. Those applications that we turn in, those start taking place in August. And when we turn those in, we need to have a budget for the upcoming year. So we have to start doing our budgeting process in the summertime, which is well ahead of when those municipalities make decisions about what their lodging tax awards are going to be. So again, we're having to kind of guess and predict in the middle of summer about a budget that is going to happen 6 months down the road. So it makes really good sense that we have to do an adjustment. I will say before we do pass a budget and before it comes to you, it's also gone through our budget and policy committee for their blessing. It has to go through our executive committee. It has to go through our board of directors. And then it also has to go through our TPA commission, the folks that kind of oversee and watch for how we're utilizing those funds for TPA before it ever comes to the county commissioners. So there's a lot of safeguards in place. Some of the other things that affected our budget this year, not so much forecasting, but the actual budget, not surprising, like all business and organizations, the economy really wreaked havoc. Inflation and fuel costs when you're thinking about visitation and tourism, whether it's a drive market or a fly drive market, people are impacted by their ability to afford those escalating costs. And again, it's kind of the second year running. We've had some real issues where the forecasting model to try to really understand what our TPA amounts will be just aren't corresponding to what they should be. They're off by about 20% systematically. So we're just now, I think we just are acknowledging that we're in a new era, and we're not going to be able to forecast like we used to be able to because the landscape has changed, so to speak. So we're just anticipating that we're always going to be down at a minimum by about 20% off of what forecast shows. When we set our budget for 2023 this year, we already, and you guys approved what our goals were going to be. We were going to try to grow our marketing KPIs or key performance indicators by 25%. The marketing KPIs that we are measuring, just a few of them are our website visits, our social media total reach, earned media placements, and PR impressions. We said we wanted to try to get 90 new certified tourism ambassadors in place to help guide people throughout the county. And we said that we were going to try to grow our sales performance by 10% as well. The budget on the left shows you the 2023 budget that you approved earlier this year, which we were hoping that our LTAC collections would come in at about 300,000. I won't read them all out loud, but the real significant variation again is in TPA based on our occupancy rate that we get from Smith Travel Research, based on the number of rooms that we had in inventory and the days in the year. We actually should have received well over $1 million of TPA assessments, those $2 assessments. But what we are looking at now is really scaling back and thinking that we're going to land in that $850,000 of collections instead of the $975,000. We also did a little better on our investments, so we had some higher interest income anticipated there. We did write a grant this year that was awarded to fund a destination master plan for Thurston County. So you'll see that in that grant income on the budget on the right of $60,000. Oops, let me go back. So we're really anticipating receiving less revenue this year. So at this mid-year budget adjustment, we're letting you kind of get a glimpse of how we're planning to scale back our expenses to accommodate that. We are decreasing some of our marketing spend. We've decreased our sales expenses, decreasing our community relations budget. It appears as though our operational budget is higher, but that's where we have tucked in our the Thurston County Destination Master Plan expenses. That process will take, it's 1 year, but it's going to span 2 fiscal years. So we've put 50% of the expenses and income in 2023, and then the other 50% are going to go in 2024. So we've not actually increased operational expenses in that way, but that is the grant related expenses. On personnel, we had hoped to hire an intern. Obviously, we did not do that. And we were able to save some money on managing the TPA itself. So we've really reduced our expenses so that we could balance our budget for this year. Any questions on the high level of the 2023 budget adjustment before I go into details?
No, and that doesn't. Commissioner Menser, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll kind of go through and itemize these and give you more detailed information. And if you have questions or comments as I go through, just feel free to launch right in. We'll take a deeper dive into our income in 2023. What we were awarded from lodging taxes from the various communities. You can see City of Lacey gave us 110. Tumwater gave us just over 36,000. City of Olympia 148. We were not awarded funds from Yelm, and we do not receive lodging tax funds from Thurston County. When it comes to our private funds, and again, these are the funds that we raise ourselves, we brought in over $106,000 of advertising revenue.
Can
Um,
Annette, can I go back into the LTAC funds?
yeah,
And I'm wondering, that distribution that happens, is it because Experience Olympia and Beyond, applies for it in Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater? And do they apply in Thurston County and they just don't get it? Or kind of how does that?
we applied for Yelm and did not receive it. But full disclosure, their fund is pretty small, and I think they had some more immediate needs in the community that they needed to fund. We'd been advised previously that we were not able to apply for Thurston County lodging tax funds. And I think that's because the pool was pretty small. And so there's more details, I think, on that you guys are working on and stuff, with lodging taxes and things like that. But that was kind of what we'd been told.
But they can still apply for
They
it.
could apply.
Is the money
So,
there?
so Annette, we're all kind of looking at each other because, the TPA could certainly apply.
Well, certainly legally we could. I had just been advised by some staff previously that we really should not. So we did not. So that's just kind of why that is that way.
Well, you could,
Okay.
or you couldn't be a member of the LTAC advisory committee. Just-
Right. And I get that because yeah. But just because I had been told that, I just was like, okay, got you.
Why don't you guys figure
Alright.
that up offline?
So
and
yeah,
let me
we
know
can
about
chat
that.
about that offline.
Okay.
And what is the process in the cities, Lacey and Olympia and Tumwater?
So each of those committees, or excuse me, communities has their own lodging tax advisory committee.
Right.
I sit on the LTAC in Olympia. I do not sit on the LTAC in Lacey and Tumwater. But they, everybody is following the same enabling legislation in the RCWs. So they each have to, populate those committees in the same way. Everybody applies. Each community has their own policy overlay that they can enact. So, as long as they're compliant with the law, which they are, then they each administer it a little bit differently. But we apply to each of those. And they each bring in highly variable amounts of lodging tax revenue. So we kind of look at what is the percentage that we're awarded of what we help generate. But it looks like Ty has a question.
Ty, go ahead.
Just a comment. I don't know exactly what the policies are that we're operating under, but I would just want to make the comment that the work of Annette's team in the last few years has really, in my opinion, shifted focus, not focus, but has shifted some of its focus towards South County in a way that I had never seen before. So it seems absolutely appropriate that they would be in the running for Thurston County dollars, depending on how many they are and how it works. I just want to make that comment.
Thank you.
I think most of your seatmates agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
Okay.
let's-
Thank
let's
you,
move
Annette,
forward.
just for that clarification on that. And
Yeah.
more discussion, I believe, will take
Yeah.
place and
connect.
kind of, so I'll let you continue with the private funds.
Okay. Also, thank you, Ty and commissioners. I appreciate that. We love the South County and we think there's a ton of stories to tell out there. So we're pretty jazzed about it. Okay. So on private funds, again, advertising, that's just stuff that we're selling. We really kind of shifted gears a couple of years ago. We used to be membership based when I came in, and that was one of the first things that the board gave me some grace on, is saying, let's not charge membership dues anymore, and let anybody who's tourism facing be a member, but let's develop supplemental advertising opportunities that deliver more value. And if people want to pay to do more because they get more value, then they can. And that really has resonated and grown. So Jeff and our team with Melissa and Heidi and Kelly, they've all worked really hard together we never used to have that advertising private revenue. So I'm really proud of those guys for growing that bucket of money themselves from just kind of rolling their sleeves up. Event income and sponsorships, we only do a couple little events each year. We do a sports awards, which by the way is coming up November 9th. You should come and celebrate your local athletics, whether it's your clubs and athletes or supporters. And then we also do our annual meeting. So that revenue comes from those two little events. We have some in-kind event income that we track, and then some sponsorships. Now, this sponsorship right here, the $65,000, this is where the county has supported us in the past. So we do receive a sponsorship from you guys, and we appreciate that. We also get a small sponsorship from the city of Tenino. And I'm trying to think I think our port sponsorship is in that bucket as well. So I'm adding them up mentally, which is never a good idea.
Could you
then
send
on-
us,
Go ahead.
could you send us that, information you said was coming up in November?
For sports awards?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of it, that's all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Gladly will do. We would love to see you guys there. It's kind of a tearjerker, so it's fun. Tearjerker in a good way. On TPA, we talked about that. So we're scaling back that forecast. The grant income, we wrote 2 grants this year. One is a Port of Seattle tourism support grant. It's a 2-for-1 match. We put in $5,000. They give us $10,000. We did a campaign called You Belong Here, where we looked at different geographic markets and tried to invite BIPOC populations and LGBTQ populations to the area. It's been super successful for a small amount of money. I don't think we're going to write that grant this year, but what I want to do is partner with some of our smaller communities in South County and try to coach them through writing those grant applications, because that's a pot of money that I think could really resonate with maybe Grand Mound or Rochester, Tenino, Yum. The other grant that we wrote was it was through Quest. It was a workforce grant trying to look at, Thurston County has really been challenged on the issue of workforce, specifically in the hospitality and tourism industry. So we wrote a $100,000 grant, which we were successful in, to do the Thurston County Destination Master Plan, where we are trying to not only look at workforce, but we've gathered, I think, something like 200 strategic plans that are currently in use in Thurston County, and our consultant is overlaying them as we speak to distill down the commonly held values, challenges, and opportunities that all of these plans have, so that we have one unified plan that we can all draw from and work from. So it's really exciting. It's midway through the process, but you'll hear a whole lot more about that soon. And this is estimated interest at the end of the year that we'll be putting into our operating reserve and strategic projects reserve. Here's just a little more detail. In our marketing and communications budget, we're just trying to make sure everything we do is data driven. We try to measure, we don't just want to see our people looking at our website. We're trying to make sure we understand if we're advertising to somebody, are they physically not only coming to the county, but are they staying the night in our lodging properties, and not only in certain communities. We want to disperse people throughout the county. And are we being effective in that? We're going to keep building out our website, bringing in social media influencers, travel writers. I've got a familiarization tour with 5 writers that I'm going to be driving around in a van next week, going all through Thurston County. We're going to have dinner at Joe's in Bucota, and we're going to go to the haunted gym. And these writers don't know what they're in for. We talked a little bit about the Destination Master Plan and the Port of Seattle Tourism Support Grant. This slide is going to be kind of small and hard for you to read, but it's really important, and it reflects a shift in the philosophy of how we're running our advertising, at least a part of it. Media attribution is what it's called. Pay attention to it. It basically means we use information resources in-house to physically identify where are the people coming from in Thurston County, how long are they staying, where are they going? We can identify what the markets are that are most likely to generate the most income in each of the communities throughout Thurston County. So we then serve them digital advertising in those markets that are most likely to generate revenue in your communities. When they get those ads, when they click through to our website, they're pixeled so that we know when they come into Thurston County and when they spend money in our properties, specifically our lodging properties that are passing through lodging tax and TPA. So this year, as of when I looked at this media attribution report, we'd already generated over 7,900 room nights just from digital advertising and no direct sales efforts at all, and over 61,000 trips and over $19 million of revenue into Thurston County just from one project that we were running. So media attribution is kind of where the industry is right now. Go ahead, Ty.
So I'm curious just about maybe the technological piece. You said pixelated. What does that mean? Like they're tagged in some way, and then you know if the same phone is in a hotel in Thurston County after they've clicked through. Like, is that how it works?
Yeah. So let's say you're sitting down in San Francisco and we serve you an ad about fall travel planning, and you're like, oh, I would love to go somewhere that has fall colors and it's not super muggy or whatever their thing is. They click on the ad and they go through to a landing page, and it gives them lots of information about the area. And they're like, amazing, I want to go to Tenino Ranch, I want to go to Colvin Ranch, whatever. At that point, they have this pixel that is placed on their phone. And yeah, it's like a tag basically that is attached to their device. We don't receive any information about them or anything like that. But when we run our media attribution report, we've geofenced Thurston County, and we've geofenced points of interest, and we've geofenced lodging properties. So we know when one of those devices that is pixeled crosses any one of those geofences, so that we can say, haha, this was successful, or, oh no, we spent money in the wrong market, let's not do that again, because we're not seeing the actual visitation happening. We don't want to get hung up on going, oh, success is just because our marketing channel is growing. That's a part of success because it shows that, oh, people are really interested, they're looking at our website and our stuff. But the real success is, are we putting people into lodging properties, and are we dispersing people throughout the community in a way that's fair and equitable to everybody? Does that make sense?
I'm hoping Commissioner Mejia understands it really well and she can educate the board. It's interesting though. Very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a lot to take in, but it's the best thing that we can do to not waste money. We just don't want to spend money in markets that isn't going to generate activity and success in this county. So I'm going to keep going. I promise you the 24 budget, or the 2024 budget, is going to go a lot faster because we'll have hit all of this before.
Great.
Okay. Community relations, we're going to keep doing all the same outreach. We'll have our annual meeting. We'll do sports awards. We're doing a lot of sentiment surveying coming up very soon. You're going to be getting hit with some surveys. It's really important that you participate in these so that we are doing what this community wants us to do. We're going to continue doing direct sales efforts to bring people who are event planners, meeting planners, sports event planners. We want to get groups into the area to the degree that we have space available to accommodate groups. These are the folks on our team right now. We're a small little group. I am hoping next year that we can add to this team, and I'm pretty sure we're going to. And by the way, if you're in public relations and you're watching this, you should get a hold of me. On the operational side, I'm really happy that we offer flexible scheduling in our office. We do work in office, but I allow people to work in the environment that is most conducive to them. So if you're somebody that needs, like we have somebody who lives in Winlock, and it's not really conducive for them to drive back and forth all the time. So they do come in and work in the office sometime, but we need to have tools in our team to allow people to work in the way that they need to. So we invest in project management and all the kind of usual tools that you would imagine to make sure that we're being effective and efficient. And we talked about TPA administration. So again, this is just a recap of the 2023 budget, and the difference, we're looking like we're going to come in, just a little bit less than what we anticipated. Any more questions or comments on 2023? Okay. Want me to move forward to 24?
Yeah, let's move
Okay.
forward.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to goals. We kind of have been pretty aggressive the last 2 years on our goals growth. It really made sense because we were coming out of COVID. We knew we had a lot of latent demand in the marketplace. You've probably heard the term revenge travel. People were sick and tired of sitting at home. They wanted to get out. We knew that was coming, and we wanted to capitalize on that. And we've done a really good job of doing that. But I don't think it's fair to expect my team to be able to operate in that same way when our economy is in a very different set of circumstances. So their goals are not quite as aggressive. We're looking at 15% growth year over year on marketing KPIs this year rather than 25%. And we're looking at 5% growth KPIs in sales rather than 10%. The budget on the left is our 2023 adjusted budget that you just looked at. So the one that had TPA scaled down to 850 from 975. We're hoping, looking over on the right, even though we know the economy is kind of chugging along in a way that is a little more difficult than any of us would like, we're still being optimistic. We are hoping that we will be able to raise our private funds a little bit. We're hoping that we might be able to get some new or increased lodging tax awards in 2024. We're hoping that our TPA collections come in a little bit better than in 2023. We tried to be optimistic and positive, but also realistic. And we are thinking that our interest income will go up as well. So just based on rising interest rates. So we have scaled up our anticipated budget just a little bit on the revenue side. On the expense side, we're hoping to queue up our marketing a little bit more. We also are doing some reclassification of line items in our budget that I'm going to try to call out, that it might make it look like we're spending more in one area or less in another, where in fact it's a matter of reclassifications, and I'll go through some of those. The reclassifications I'll explain in more detail in a couple slides, but I think it's really important both for transparency and reporting, transparency and measurement, and transparency for my staff who's trying to manage their budgets. So on the sales side, we're hoping to give Jeff a little more money to work with on direct bookings. Community relations used to be kind of a freestanding category that was tucked into our operational budget, which really doesn't sit well with me because community relations is public relations and really should be included in the marketing budget. And so that's part of why you're going to see that marketing budget number increase there. It's a function of reallocation. Our operational budget looks like it's decreased. We're not operating at a smaller capacity. We're just moving community relations into public relations and marketing. Our personnel budget is going up because we are hoping to make some changes this year. We'll see how that goes. And then we anticipate that the cost of administering the TPA could go up a little bit as well. So any questions on the high level budget for 2024? Okay, I'm going to keep moving along then. Our budget right now is, it's kind of interesting, was for LTAC was created before we went through our LTAC ask process for Lacey, Tumwater, and Olympia. All of those things have taken place, but none of them have gone through council yet to be approved. So I'm not changing any of these amounts until we know for sure. So we just anticipated the same level, with the exception that maybe Yelm might do a small award this year. Hard to say. On the private fund side, I didn't see a whole lot of change happening here. so kind of holding steady. When we're looking at trend data in the industry, obviously we're all hearing, recessionary talk, and we all are having our own real life experiences of knowing what it's like to buy groceries, and that things are certainly difficult. With that said, there is still data showing that leisure visitation is still moving forward. It's slower. So I think there is cause to think that we could still see visitation increase in the leisure segment coming up this year, which is why we've increased that TPA assessment forecast. Business is still going to be a struggle for a while, especially in our area where we are very challenged by the issue of not having adequate meeting space. We've got the grant funds received from the Quest grant for the Destination Master Plan are reflected in here. For the second half of that project, you're not going to see that other 15,000 from Port of Seattle, because like I said, we're not going to apply directly this year, but I'd love to work with one of our smaller communities and try to coach them up on them writing a grant for themselves. And those are estimated funds for interest. I talked a little bit about the reallocations, moving community relations out of operating expenses so that it more accurately reflects our marketing expenses. One thing that I thought was kind of odd was we had SEO, which is search engine optimization, listed in our advertising budget. It's really not advertising. It's associated with our website, which is a product. So I've moved SEO out of our advertising budget and into the website line item, just so that we can really get a true cost of what the website is. We've moved some content items like photography and videography that we do for the website also into the website budget, so that we can really see if we're making X amount of money on digital products for the website, what's the true cost? Are we winning or are we losing? The website is not a business of its own. It doesn't have to make money, but I want to at least know where we're making really good investments with public funds. Let's see here. We've made a new line item in the budget called products. Historically, we've had membership and research lumped together in one category. Memberships are talking about affiliations that we have, like our affiliation with Destinations International, DMA West, WSDMO. I think research was probably lumped into that because we weren't really doing research historically. So we're doing a lot of it now. So we're separating it. So I know how much are we spending on source data to drive our decisions versus how much is being invested into industry PR. Two totally different things. We're really not, I think we're going to be continuing forward in a very similar fashion in 2024 in terms of marketing communications, data-driven decisions. We're going to continue building out content and partner listings. For anybody who's a tourism-facing business, just let us know. We'll put you on the website. It doesn't cost you anything. We just want to know who you are so we can promote you. We'll keep doing social media, influencers and press trips to the area. We're going to finish up on the Destination Master Plan. We'll still do our annual meeting. We'll still do sports awards. We're still going to do surveying. We're going to complete the Destination Master Plan. We'll continue running the Certified Tourism Ambassador program and conducting outreach as we can. We're going to try to arm Jeff with a little more funding if we have the funds to do so, to continue to push sales into the entirety of the county. We're going to invest in personnel. One new thing that we are trying to add, we don't have a lot of supplemental funds to work with, so the things that we can add are small, but I am going to be adding a small monthly wellness or health or self-care stipend. We haven't kind of named it, but I am concerned about my team. Everybody works a lot, and I think physical wellness or mental wellness, whatever you need to do to maintain balance in your life is important. So we're going to provide a little stipend to help people do that on their own, in their own time and in the way that makes sense for them. We will continue operating in the same fashion. We're going to continue offering flexible scheduling so that we're going to really continue to invest in our project management. As noted, we have reallocated community relations to marketing from this budget. We'll continue administering TPA. And here is a recap of 23 versus 24 anticipated budgets. Any questions on that or comments?
Thank you. Questions?
No, good presentation, good info.
Great.
Okay, no, it looks like no one has questions. Thank you so much, Annette.
Yep.
And please do send us the link to the video so we can all check it out.
I will. I'm so sorry. I had a feeling that might happen, but it's worth a try.
Yeah, it's always worth a try. Okay,
Okay. Thanks all.
perfect. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, Annette. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next session is set to start at 2:30, so we'll go ahead and take a 6-minute break. We are back from break and we are starting with emergency management and Medic One, and we have Ben Miller Todd here joining us, some of his staff members. Nicole, anything you need to add before we get started?
So just following up with budget presentations, we're moving into emergency management, and then I'll just hand it over to Jim. Thank you.
Alright, sounds perfect. Ben Miller Todd, Emergency Services Director. Just as a reminder, we're here to talk about both. Oh, thank you. We're here to talk about both emergency management and the Medic One division. So as we're walking through this, just keep in mind, it's easy to keep track of it as you're going through your head, that you're dealing with levy funds that are associated with any of the Medic One proposed changes, and we're talking about largely general fund when we're talking about emergency management. So just keep that in mind. It's sometimes hard as we're walking through two separate divisions, two separate funding components as we're walking through this. Just keep that in mind, and we'll continuously discuss and talk about that. A couple of the things that I really wanted to start ahead of this conversation and ahead of the slide deck with heading it off with the conversation regarding FTE reductions that came in after policy level requests were due. And so we want to have that conversation on the front end and allow for an opportunity to talk and inform. I see this as an opportunity to really inform you as to some of the ramifications of any decisions that might be made. Additionally, we want to be highly responsive, and what you'll see in our proposals are responsive to the requests that were made, and give you a variety of different options and be able to walk you through some of the impacts to service delivery that may occur as we go deeper and deeper and deeper to reach what had been proposed to us, about $174,000 in reduction based on a reduction in appropriation for 24 and 25. With that, I'll kick it off with just a couple reminders. Emergency management, talking about the emergency management division specifically, which was asked for the reduced FTEs, covers the emergency support structure for Thurston County. Thurston County has roughly 300,000 residents, and what we look to do and how we serve the public is very much surrounding 4 basic topics that I'm hoping to instill in you by the end of this conversation, which are preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. And as we go through that cycle, which is an ongoing cycle, the way in which we prepare our community makes our community more resilient. So any of those programs that we have, such as the Preparedness Expo, any of the trainings that we have in our community, all the outreach that we do, the more prepared we can make our community, the more resilient that we are, and more coordinated we are as we move forward. Additionally, we need to respond. There are certain aspects of emergency management that are requirements. There are regulatory requirements for how we operate, and in those requirements are largely surrounding response. The EOC, or the Emergency Operations Center, ultimately needs to be staffed. And so when we're talking about FTE reductions, there are some needs that we have in terms of basic staffing to be able to support logistics, finance, operations, and planning. All of those section chiefs, as well as oversight for the EOC or the Emergency Operations Center in general, which are largely supported by staff. We also have 24/7 continuous operations, which kind of is in that gray area between preparedness, making sure that we're accessible, and then response. So that duty officer, the 24/7 coverage, 365 that we need to have with the EM duty officers is to be able to respond to a variety of events. For instance, we had responses to Offutt Lake. We've had responses to flooding in 22 and 23, or excuse me, December 21 into January 22. We've had all of these activations that we've needed the people available to be able to staff up those positions and be responsive. Getting into recovery, that's a major component that actually has economic impacts to the community itself. If we don't support recovery efforts, we're potentially leaving money on the table. The grant funding that's available, especially after the flooding incident in 2022, that grant funding that came in would be very difficult to manage if we don't have the appropriate people in the appropriate positions to support economic recovery, physical recovery, and recovery in general. Lastly, we don't want disasters that are preventable to continue to happen. And so mitigation, when we're talking about that aspect of mitigation, what we really fundamentally want to try to achieve is that we're mitigating any of this cycle again. So as you think about preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation, how are we mitigating those components in our community from those disasters happening? We can't stop an earthquake from happening, which I'll remind everybody that within the last week, we did have a 4.3 that actually affected Puget Sound. We cannot stop the ground from shaking, but we can address issues following major disasters, that there's funding opportunities that are available for flood mitigation efforts, for seismic retrofitting, for fire mitigation and making our homes fire-wise, the fire-wise initiative that we just presented. All of those are making our community more resilient and mitigating the impacts of future disasters. And so as we're talking through that, please hear and understand that those are the components that we're looking to potentially reduce and affect the service delivery to our residents. With that, we were appropriated in 2023, just to walk you through the numbers, 2.3 roughly, these are rounded up numbers, $2.3 million, which when we're asked for an 8% reduction ends in the $174,000 that was asked in proposed reduction specifically for FTEs, okay? With that, what is that $2.3 million made up of? That $2.3 million is made up of roughly 800, yes.
Presentation, are you?
No, this is independent of
This is
that. This is
before
the, this is the prep. Without this pre-conversation, some of these don't quite make sense. And so this is specifically about the FTE components that are not included in the presentation. Sorry, that's fair. That's a fair question. You're warming me up. I can answer that one. With that, we have $825,000 in grant funds. And so within that $2.3 million of the proportion, grants make up $825,000 of that. Internal service costs make up $500,000 of that. Our operating expenses, our discretionary spending is $124,000 of that, and $933,000 is associated with salaries. That is not all that the general fund pays in salaries. We have roughly $260,000 that is offset by grant funding. And so ultimately what happens, what it boils down to is that when we're talking about FTEs specifically that come out of general fund, we have $635,000. $635,000 that specifically are funded out of general fund for 8.05 FTEs that are not supported by grant funding. This is where I take a breath. And I just quickly, the slide will be wonderful when you see it. However, when we're looking at $174,000 reduction, specifically on general fund funded salaries and benefits, out of the $635,000, that is a 27.4% decrease in funding for FTEs within emergency management and within the division for a total of 8.05 FTEs. As I let that kind of sink in, the proposals, which we will propose to you 4 different options. They're in the slide deck, but we'll make sure that they're entered into Questica. There's 4 different options that we're going to present that are escalating, and we will be fully responsive to the 174, but giving you a variety of options moving forward. The 8.05 FTEs in emergency management division are made up of a director, which is 0.05. 5% of my salary is funded out of the general fund. Fiscal manager is half of an FTE. EM manager is a full-time FTE. We have 5.5 FTEs in coordinators and an administrative assistant of 1 FTE. 7, and this is where it becomes complicated, and I actually need to violate the guidance that was given for how we're going to do this. 7 of those positions currently are in support of, are receiving, or a match for a grant. And so they are fundamentally, by definition, revenue generating, which leaves us 1.05 FTEs to be able to actually address some of these issues. With that, the FTEs that aren't specifically grant funded, match, or in support of a grant program are the half of an FTE for fiscal management, half of an FTE for an EM coordinator position specifically, and I have to talk specific programs because some of these components we can't cut because they're grant funded. And so I'm talking specific programs is for a South County coordination that the Board of County Commissioners approved roughly 4 years ago, I believe. That EM coordinator position is not associated with a grant, is entirely general fund funded, and it's considered one of those that would qualify for the reduction. And additionally, the 5% for my position. So that gets you to 1.05, okay? The total dollar figure, if we cut all of those, is $127,000. With that, we have to get to 174, you're gonna hear us violate some of the guidance around revenue generating positions. As we walk through this, I just need you to be aware, and yes, I will use this slide deck at some point, I promise. As we walk through this, I just need you to be aware of some of the components that EM coordinators do, okay? So that you're aware of what exactly the programs are that you may be cutting. When we're talking about how we're communicating with the community, it's our alert and warning system that the EM coordinators help to support. It's our preparedness and community outreach, whether it's a preparedness expo, whether it's registering individuals for TC Alert, whether it's preparedness in terms of 2 weeks of preparation, answering all the questions for the community, even making sure that the requests for sandbags go through in preparation of floods. All of those components are in preparation and outreach. Comprehensive emergency management plan is a regulatory requirement. We need to be updating our CEMP, our comprehensive emergency management plan, routinely. And so just so you're aware, there's some tasks that we are required to make sure that we accomplish. Homeland Security Region 3 coordination, just as a reminder, Thurston County's Emergency Management Division Thurston County is the lead administrative agency for 5-county region. We get a half of an FTE in support of the regional coordination, and that FTE is tasked with making sure that the items that you see coming from the board that are from Pacific County and those that are coming in from Lewis County and various other projects, it's because we're the lead administrative agency for the Homeland Security Region 3 area, okay? South Thurston County Community Support, identified 4 years ago, was a lack of streamlined communication with those communities that are in our more rural section of the county. We needed to give them support in supporting their emergency management plan designs in order to coordinate with us more seamlessly in the event of a disaster. That is, coordination and communication are key for effective response. Every single AAR, or after action report you ever read, there's one item that should just be left on it entirely, incessantly. Communication. Communication, communication, communication. And this was used to help communicate and support and coordinate with our South Thurston colleagues. We have recently taken on the entirety of the continuity of operation planning for Thurston County. And so that will be housed within the Thurston County Emergency Management Division. And so that's in support of all of the departments and offices within Thurston County, as well as recovery, as we talked about earlier, and hazard mitigation plan. One thing that I will point out is that we were incredibly short-staffed in 2022, as well as funding streams were briefly, I would say, stutter-stepped or interrupted. One of the components that you've heard consistently, and I think Robin might be able to speak to this, is that the hazard mitigation plan is actually helpful in revenue generation for other departments. When we put in for funding opportunities for federal grants, a component that they want to see is an updated hazard mitigation plan. So not only are we looking at revenue generation in positions that are within the division, but also revenue generation in departments, and also revenue generation for the municipalities that we support. The hazard mitigation plan that we have for Thurston County is required for any federal grants that any of our municipalities apply to, including Olympia, Lacey, Tumwater, and others. All right. Getting to it. Proposal A, we went through A, B, C, D. These will be entered into Questica for your review. Proposal A is ultimately, it's not an attempt to be non-responsive, but I painted the picture of it's very complicated for us to be exactly responsive to the ask for FTEs. Option A is a $53,000 reduction that we will propose. 18,000 of that we've been able to potentially identify, and a reduction in discretionary spending or operational expenses. Remember that we have $124,000 that are in that discretionary spending. This is almost a 15% reduction in that. We do have a reduction. This isn't excess funds in any way, shape, or form. There would be a reduction in terms of what we would be able to procure and provide. In this, we would make calculated decisions. We've been able a variety of different options potentially of what it might look like to reduce that, as well as $35,000 that I'll bring up here in just a second. Yes.
When you're saying discretionary spending, what does
Okay.
that mean? Like what?
Yeah.
Can you go a little bit into kind of what you use that funding for and
Well,
examples
yeah.
of that.
So there's a variety of different components when you're looking at professional services, supplies, everything that kind of falls into the general operations of a division. There are some components that we may be able to look at reducing coverage on, whether it be looking at a variety of different options in terms of a reduction in functionality of, let's say, a software system. Might be able to coordinate with the state to be able to reduce our functionality, but move to a platform that may be covered, for instance. And so looking at some of those operational components that specifically would help to reduce the cost, but also reduce functionality. Okay. The $35,000 also in savings that we're gonna discuss is that when originally, and this is just in terms of how the projections are set out for salaries and benefits, when there's open positions available in a department or a division, what happens is that the middle range of the salary and benefits is basically plugged in for those vacant positions moving forward for the projections. The two individuals that we did recently hire that were after the projections were made for the ongoing revenue stream or the ongoing cost of salary and benefits projected out into 24 and 25, we came in significantly underneath the midway point, to a tune of about $15,000 in savings between both of those individuals, which would be sustained because they're starting at a lower step and it gives us more room. Basically, it's resetting that calculation as we had two individuals that had retired that are now filled by entry-level positions. That equals
When were those positions filled?
mid-July and mid-August. Yep. So that's proposal A. I know you didn't hear an FTE yet. The next one I get there, okay? Everything builds. So all of our proposals assume the last proposal plus, okay? The last proposal, so the $53,000 that we proposed in addition to the half of an FTE, so being consistent with our with how we're approaching this, the half of an FTE for South County EM coordination would ultimately be the half of an FTE that is not grant funded, that is specific to the general fund and would reduce by another roughly $46,000. That comes out to about $99,000. We'll round to 100 if you're safe with that. That's about a $100,000 reduction as we move through this. Okay. With that, I do want to remind you, I know I'm talking through this. If you've been able to kind of see the slide on the first slide, one thing that I want to bring up that is a monumental impact to the emergency management division, and take it for what you will, is that including the grant funding, the revenue, the grant funding in the calculation for the 8% reduction, so applying the reduction in appropriation by 8% for 2.3 million, which includes the $825,000 in grant funding, is a significant impact for 8.05 FTEs. I'm not saying that this is minimizing anybody else's impact. It's just it's an incredible impact when we're looking at including that 8% for the $825,000 that is really, we're bringing in revenue to offset that appropriation. That's incredibly impactful for a division that is 8.05 FTE. With that, it gets very complicated as we go into our next two proposals. I would pose that I understand that we need to be responsive to your requests. I would also consider potentially when you're going through the considerations, this one matches very, very closely with an 8% reduction if you remove the $825,000. Just so you're aware. If you remove the $825,000 in grants, apply the 8% to the remainder, this is extraordinarily close to that 8% that we would need to get to excluding the grants. To be fully responsive, we'll go through the next two options and we'll slide over to the deck you have. I'm getting there. With those two in mind, the next reduction, there will be, when you see our slide deck, there will be an asterisk on this one. We are now touching on positions that are violating the original guidance, which was don't include revenue generating or those that were coded to grants. We do have a half of an FTE that we're proposing in the reduction in terms of going through the third and fourth option. That would be the administrative assistant one that is in our program. It is a roughly $35,000 reduction and a half of an FTE. And it does code out to grants, just to be aware. That administrative assistant position also is very responsive to the administrative aspects of grant management. So making sure that we are going through hundreds. Okay, emergency management procures many, many, many items throughout the years that need to be recorded and assessed in terms of state auditing requirements and other things to make sure that we're responsive to the grant and the deliverables. And those are in perpetuity for the most part until they're taken out of the system. And they have to be recorded in a certain manner. Emergency management procures many, many, many items over the course of decades that we are tracking. And that's something that we need to have administrative support. And that would be a fundamental impact to how emergency management is able to function. So this position, we're proposing a half of an FTE reduction, and to be fully responsive to the $174,000 ask, it would be the half of an FTE in South County, additional savings in salaries and benefits that we previously noted, reduction in the full FTE for the administrative assistant position, and because I don't want to propose over $174,000, we would reduce the operational budget reduction to roughly $14,000 instead of the $18,000. Any questions on that?
Is there a visual? I'm a visual person, so like I'm trying to, I know that there's gonna be a template that's gonna be sent out. I've been trying to kind of
It's hard to follow along.
try it, like write it down, but I think I just kind of been mixing the different aspects of it. And I don't want you to go through it again, so if I could get it in a visual format, I would appreciate it because it would help me understand a little bit better.
Sure. So they do have a visual. It wasn't given to us enough time to share with the public, so we'll have to send it to you afterwards, I believe, to make sure that we
Or
meet
with the board.
Or does the board want to see it?
Public aside, we did not receive it in advance.
We did not receive it in advance, that's correct.
So once we receive it, we'll print it out and get it to you.
And I do have it now, so
Got
I'll
it
get
now.
it to you later this afternoon.
Okay, that's fine. It's just, I don't wanna
I
take,
completely understand.
take away from what you're saying, and I really am trying to write it down, but I think I already even got my numbers mixed up as I've been writing it down. Any additional questions from commissioners in regards to proposal A and proposal B? And you have
Not
one more
until I see the
proposal?
visual.
So
No,
just I
there's
thought it was
just two
healthy to have four.
proposals? Okay, Commissioner Menser?
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
And just so you're aware, this is clearly defined in the slide deck that you'll have
Okay.
access to.
Thank you.
I would note that I'm looking in our financial system at the last few years of revenue that was assumed in the budget for Department 29. That's emergency management, right?
29A.
29.
29A.
29 is Medic 1.
Right, but if I were to enter 0129, that would bring up,
That's correct.
yeah. So what I'm seeing is of the grant money that is recorded as available to spend in the budget in each of the last 3 years. Well, you do better from 2020, but in 21 and 22, less than half of that revenue was collected.
Just so you're aware, we had a large number of turnovers that were associated with that. As we were going through that turnover process, we had a number of open positions that were ultimately left vacant for a number of months, for extended periods of time. That made us, for one item, I would say for the grant items that you're seeing in there, we use those just as you know for match. And so there was a large portion that ultimately we had to actually return because we didn't have positions to actually complete the deliverables. We now are fully staffed to be able to meet all of those. I'll also point out that an open position at emergency management ended up, we actually applied for and received grant funding for a position that ultimately was vacant and we ran out of match. And so we actually had to not actually bring in more grant revenue because of the fact that we were understaffed. And so we try to maintain as high of a percentage in terms of our utilization for grants and match and everything else that we possibly can. And we actually could not execute the contract on a grant that we were actually awarded because we were understaffed.
We additionally had staff working on COVID response, which didn't end for us in 21. That continued. And so the deliverables for those grants, like he said, that also affected that. So the vacant positions, in addition to not being able to meet deliverables, impacted that.
And the extensions that the state has allowed for some of those grants have not applied to those that are expiring more recently. And so you see the 2020 was largely used. And you get into 21 and the state did not issue the same extensions that they allowed for in the other grants due to COVID restrictions, so.
Okay, I see there's significant reversions as well, but
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
We couldn't meet deliverables. And additionally, some of the projects that were awarded by the LCOT, which is the Local Committee on Terrorism, those projects, because they're first responders, weren't able to also get all of their equipment requests in and all of that. And so if they
Right.
can't get those in, then we can't.
okay.
Yeah.
So we can get additional information to you. For the board, we'll get you the visuals that Ben's been talking through. But I think, given the time, we need to move into the,
Yes.
I have one more question in regards to the Emergency Management Council Fund, the 1140. I know you're gonna touch more a little bit on it, but I was wondering kind of what does that specifically cover, and can some of these proposals that you're thinking about, can it be covered by this fund? Or is it specifically for certain things?
It's restricted.
It's a restricted fund associated, so we have a Region 3 IMT, and what that IMT is incident management team. The regional incident management team is deployable around the region, and what is actually in that fund and what's that dedicated fund covers is actually all revenue that they've generated from being deployed. And so the plans trailer that was moved from, or the trailer that was moved from Public Health to Emergency Management Division was a secondary trailer, which will also continue to provide revenue into that account. And so that's what you're seeing is an appropriation of the revenue in order to outfit in 2024 that plans trailer that is all based on revenue off of those. The first trailer helps to outfit the second, and so.
So staff time cannot be charged to this fund?
No.
Okay.
I will run through and, I apologize, Commissioner Menser has his hand up.
Commissioner Menser, go ahead, sir.
I'm just wondering if, question for, I guess, Robin or Nicole, if Ben, let's just take the 825,000, if that amount of money is being hauled in, forget about projection, but if that's actually being received by EM, is there any value to us using that revenue in an 8% calculation target number for them? I mean, it doesn't, I know this came up with one other group that we discussed and I was a little confused. Was it just for ease of, maybe it was public defense, but was it just for ease of the exercise, or is there some reason why the commissioners would target a reduction for grant funding like that?
so the computation would basically, assuming all available revenue that's been recorded in the budget system by all offices and departments, the board needed to generate $7 million in reductions. It wasn't a 8% cut, it's a $7 million cut. and we needed a method to allocate it. And quite frankly, you want to go with something that's fairly straightforward. Once we start adjusting for this item's got a grant coming in and that item's got a revenue, this kind of revenue to support, it starts to get very complicated to show how we arrived at a given number for a target. Now, we certainly could do that, but then you get into conversations about what kind of funding is aligned with what kind of spending in any given office and department. And like I said, it becomes very complicated. At the end of the day, even if we pulled out any expenditures that are supported by certain types of revenue, you still need to get to a $7 million reduction. So instead of an 8% reduction on offices and departments, we would have calculated a 25% reduction or whatever that number would have been to get there. And again, we can certainly do that kind of a computation if the board would like to see an alternative cut list, but it's going to be a whole lot more than 8%.
I would just add that the revenue that we do have included in the general fund that is grant funded is covered by the expenses, so you have a wash. So if it is something of
Right.
position or whatever expenses are in there are also covered by the revenue. And so we did need $7 million to be able to balance. So however that's taken, we still need to get to that number.
Right. I would also add that in the current systems that we have, there is no easy way to align the revenue coming in with the expenditures going out. That has been one of the challenges that we've had for many years. And that's one of the things that we're working to resolve as we implement the new ERP. But right now, it would be, it's very difficult to align those. So again, we can do an exercise, the budget team can come up with what those numbers are, but you still need to cut $7 million.
We did ask departments and offices to give us a copy of their grant layout sheet to let us know what their grants were coming in so that we could possibly do some kind of exercise like that. We did get a response from some offices and departments concerning that.
Not all of them.
But not all, and we'd still have to review that information.
I think there's additional kind of complexity that's layered on here when you factor in the match component. So if you actually are making a reduction that reduces your match, then you will reduce the grant amount. So it's kind of this, it will just self-fulfilling. It's just going to continue to erode one way or the other or both ways.
Correct.
And that's where at some point in time, it becomes not capable of fulfilling the mission that the department needs to do in terms of readiness.
But again, the budget team requested a grant schedule, if you will, that listed all incoming grants and the amount of match required. And I don't know if we received one from emergency management.
Yeah.
Okay, you've turned yours in, good job. Not everybody has.
Well, we need to see that, I think.
I think we do need to see that. Yeah. So Commissioner Menser, did that address your question?
It did address my question. It sounds like the reality or the answer or the right answer is in the middle of the two positions. Like, let's say county says 8% cut. We don't care if you're getting grants or not. If it's coming in general fund, we're cutting the same. Between that position and then Ben's position where he's saying you got to extract all grant money that's coming in because that's, not going to be fair. That's going to really be a 27% cut or whatever he said. Like, the answer is in the middle. It sounds like it's reasonable. It's reasonable for us to know a department that has a unique structure like that. And maybe like when Patrick came in for public defense and said, you're really cutting me 11.2%. Well, maybe that's the number it should be, based on non-grant funding, because you're saying it would be higher than 8. Maybe we look at that and go, well, public defense is that's about how this shakes out. Maybe it's too harsh on emergency management, and we have to keep that in mind, and be a little more targeted, when we have a department with a unique structure, unique from the other departments. Anyway, that's kind of how I'm hearing what you're saying, and if I'm off base, let me know.
No, that's a very, very good analysis. All right, and exactly why offices and departments have an opportunity to come and talk to you.
And I just want to say, and I said this to Ben privately, but I want to say it publicly, the way he's laid this out for our consideration is exactly what I was hoping to see from the department. So I really commend him on taking a very tough task and putting it in a form that I can understand and kind of grapple with. And doesn't make it easy, it makes it hard. And that's what, the board gave departments the opportunity to make this hard for us. And the way Ben has done it is doing just that. So he's doing his job, and he's making me feel more informed about the choices that I'm going to have to make that I'm not excited about making.
Thank you.
Thanks. With 2 minutes left, I'm gonna hit the high points. With that, I'm gonna go over Medic 1 since we haven't talked about that very much, and I'm gonna fixate on Medic 1. Just as a reminder, we do support the EMS levy is applied to all of Thurston County. We support 12 fire agencies and their medical oversight, their training, their supplies, and a variety of other tasks. We also signed 3 ALS contracts with the two major municipalities, the city of Tumwater, the city of Olympia, and Lacey Fire District 3 to supply 7 medic units 24/7 as we go through that. As we're going through the various funds, I'm going to skip over the high level and I'm going to get more into the weeds, I will say. This should be not anything new from the 10-year plan or any of the conversations that the budget office has heard previously. So this will be very much in alignment with the materials that were submitted, ER&R plan, and all those components included, as well as the 10-year plan to make it work effectively. As we already discussed, just as a heads up, the one thing that needs to change in your packet is that there's a policy level request associated with reappropriating my salary, which would be a 0.15 increase in 24 and 25. There was a slight typo here. That was one of the changes that we corrected in the updated packet that you'll receive. So moving into 24 and 25, it would be 8.2 for emergency management moving forward. Additionally, that would be a subsequent 0.15 reduction in Medic 1 because it's just a reappropriation of that to 13.3. And I'm going to keep moving through these slides. Additionally, there is one, you had asked about the 1140 fund, as we already discussed. That is specifically for the revenue that is generated by the plans trailers and is used in support of the Region 3 IMT. What's being asked for in terms of the allocation for 24 and 25 are specifically largely associated with outfitting the plans trailer to make it deployable, as well as a small component of increased training for the region to be response capable. And so those were those components. Medic 1 opportunities. I want to just at least highlight the fact that healthcare costs continue to rise faster than inflation. And so it makes it very, very complicated to keep up with a national healthcare expenditure inflationary rate that is greater than the inflation we're experiencing in the field, which has created a lot of strained budgets, I think, across the realm. But this for us in particular is healthcare costs. Opportunities that we have are to leverage new technologies, advocate for improving access to healthcare for Thurston County residents, educate stakeholders, and support Thurston County fire agencies. Emergency management opportunities, we've already discussed this. I will leave it to you to disseminate or to peruse this on your own time. With that, policy level proposals, the Medic 1 advanced life support increases are specifically associated with increasing costs associated with medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, and the increasing labor costs in the ALS contracts. And so we, just as a reminder, we don't directly negotiate labor costs with the fire agencies that support the firefighter paramedics. We pay 80% of their wage as we move forward. So that's negotiated by the agent, between labor and management within the agency. We put in a 5% increase in each year. So as you're looking at this, the 680, about 700,000 in year one, keep in mind everything in this is calculated off of 2023. So we're going up 700,000 from 2023, which is roughly $11.6 million line. And then we're going up by a total from 2023 of about 1.4. So about 5% each year in the costs. BLS support, this is an increase in $120,000 for all 12 agencies, as well as in terms of their medical supply support. Again, this is roughly about a 15% increase, which is in alignment with the increase in costs in healthcare over the last couple of years for medical supplies and other items, as well as increasing training costs. Remember, we do training, not our own people being trained, but training a 650-person workforce. Medic One IT does support all 12 public agencies in terms of all the tablets we deploy, which is 140, all the medical supplies we put on the medic units, and basically all the equipment that is deployed from the EMS sector, software, hardware, everything. This is staffed by currently 1, as of today, 2 employees do all of this support throughout the county. You see this go flat in 2025. Because we have 2-year contracts that we're anticipating to sign. So 24, you see the increase, 25 should remain flat because most of our contracts will maintain throughout the 2-year period. Medic One equipment costs, I'm going to refer to the ER&R plan that's in front of you. This aligns exactly with the ER&R dollar figures in association with the increased cost. You have the medic units that we've been discussing that is in that, as well as AEDs, ventilators, and a variety of other equipment that is in the packet that was presented to you. All of these proposals have been unanimously supported by the Emergency Management Council as well, and have been vetted through their budget subcommittee. Lastly, we did want to call out the 8th medic unit, the proposal for the 8th medic unit that we did put in the informational pamphlet prior to the levy in 2021. We did discuss, and we are at that place where we have a call volume that we need to start planning in and implementing an 8th medic unit, and that funding starts in 2025. I'm going to slide through the EM ones fairly quickly. The commissioners had asked for $100,000, roughly, small projects and a variety of projects that are associated with improved communication in the event that there's a cellular outage. We have 3 proposals of escalating. You'll see that I have a theme here. I always have proposals. You have 3 different options that we proposed. One of those is ham radio operators to be able to support that. That's about a $10,000 project to be able to increase training on ham radios, which would allow for a redundant communication system in the event of a cellular outage. Secondarily, there's a $30,000 proposal that's included that would be 2 variable message signs so that we could target communication specifically to communities affected. And there's a $100,000 proposal that is scalable for radios that would be deployed out into the field, the NOAA radios. Communication is key to making a resilient community.
Robin, can this be covered through, or Nicole or Jennifer, ARPA?
We can look into it.
We'll look at that,
We can look into
maybe.
that.
Okay.
And and to be clear, the priority in terms of the division is making sure that we have enough staff to be able to do this. So this was submitted prior to the FTE ask, and the priority would be that this needs staff in order to be able to execute any of these programs. And so just be aware of that. Lastly, I'm going to go over these fairly quickly. There is the Homeland Security Region 3 Incident Management Team. We talked about the trailer and the training, as well as there are 2 placeholders for grants. I got to the end.
Commissioner Menser, you have your hand up. Do you have a question or comment, sir?
Sorry, I left it up from before.
Okay. Commissioner Edwards?
No, I don't have anything right now.
I guess I'll say what, you know, we've been telling everyone that's come in front of the board so far, which feels like quite a few. You know, understand that this is a very hard decision. It's a very hard proposals that are being put in front of the board, understanding the level of where you're at, and do appreciate bringing in the reality of it as well. I don't think anyone in the board, when we made these requests, you know, we knew that we were asking for something very difficult. Like I've said before, I know that there's no trimming of fat here. It's really, we're getting into the core of services that we're, you know, that we give out to our community. And I know that we'll try to be as creative as we possibly can. Even with requests that are coming through, right? I think the board has tried to be as, you know, asking our budget team to see if any other fund could possibly alleviate, you know, some of that. So, thank you.
Maybe I do have one.
You do have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Who's gonna be on the receiving end of the ham radio process?
That would be both community members, that we would have available trainings, for them to train them up.
So
on
there's
it.
some ham radio clubs or something.
Yeah,
I take
so in
it,
support with Aries and others, we would coordinate with them and help to support that training program to have a redundant communication system.
right? And how many of the fire services have that ability? There's a couple that do. I don't know how many though.
I would have to do the research on that one. I can't answer that right now, but I will get back to you on exactly how many have that capability.
I think that might be worth knowing.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, so, before we close today, I would just like to say that, the presentations that we've been going through for the past 2 weeks now, this being our second week, are aligned with building the 24 and 25 biennium budget. We've been hearing the policy level requests from our departments, as well as the hard exercise of looking into, cuts to the general fund. The budget office has worked very diligently to look at all revenue sources to come into the general fund. Major revenue sources such as property tax. We've been working hand in hand with the assessor's office to make sure that those revenue numbers, based on preliminary information from the assessor, is calculated correctly. The information that we have presented to the board, as of what we've received from the assessor, is correct. And coming tomorrow, we will have next steps, and we will be able to look into that information even more closely with updated information from the assessor and address it at that time.
Maybe one other thing.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure. On your licensing fees for all your IT stuff, do you take care of that yourself or is that going through IT?
In terms, so unfortunately, I'm gonna have to clarify. Emergency management, is
Yep.
supported through the central IT, component, and all of the software programs, for the most part, all of that would be provided through IT support. Ultimately, the Medic One fund, the dedicated fund, would ultimately pay for any of the licensing fees or anything that we would have to support would come out of the Medic One levy funds. So, sorry, two different divisions, two different answers.
Okay.
I guess, just as a follow-up to those comments on budget, the thing that doesn't take into consideration is revenues are down, and we can see that. But the problem is the purchasing power of the dollar that those bring in is down by about 14% over the last 2 years, at least, because of inflation. Therein, those, combining those two things, that's the problem.
Costs are not, but revenue's flat.
Yeah. Right. The revenue flat and the buying power is less, and you can have a vehicle, but you just can't have any gas in it.
Yes, because we can manage one-time costs, it's the ongoing.
Yes. Okay,
All right.
thank you. Okay, 3:26, we are adjourned.